Hello, friends. We are back, the Experience AV podcast with Jim and Jeremy. It has been a minute. We got into some stuff. We had to regroup, but we are excited to be back.
Hey, everybody. Excited to be here. Boy, it has been a hot minute, and we missed a few shows along the way that we had planned on. So, we want to start the show and kind of talk specifically about that. I'll kind of kick it off here in that Jim and I were just so excited to start a podcast. We'd never done our own podcast before, and boy, did we get in over our heads. I guess if we didn't have day jobs, it'd probably be a little bit easier to manage. But we were like, hey, let's start a podcast. It'll be great. We'll recreate some of the awesome conversations that we have all the time. And then, we jumped off the cliff. We had to get video production software, and we had to get all these fancy images so that we could make it look fancy and professional. And before we knew it, we needed like 4 to 5 hours a week just to prepare for our podcast. It started to become super scripted, over scripted, to the point where we're like, we don't have time to do this. We've got day jobs. How are we going to get back on this? And I think I know for me, I put a lot of pressure on myself to try to create something that, was big and professional feeling, and it totally got away from the point, which was Jim Maltese and Jeremy Elsesser getting on a call together and rapping about all the cool stuff that we love in the AV industry. So, Jim, you got some thoughts?
Yeah, no, and I'm right there with you. And I feel like we did. Like, I'm proud of the content we put out, but it felt like a lesson, or it felt like you said, a scripted thing, and that's not the vibe we were going for, I don't think. So it was cool, it was fun, we certainly learned a lot, but what I find interesting about these types of shows is just the unscripted conversations and the thoughts. So it's not really a presentation, it's just hanging out, getting something, off the cuff and learning something new, maybe exploring something new. And instead of having that pre-packaged back and forth kind of planned out thing, I like the idea of just keeping it fresh, and hopefully that is more sustainable, because it was getting crazy to try to plan all that and all the technology stuff, and then the ideas we had coming up where we wanted to do shootouts, and then the technology involved with that, it was like going off the rails.
Well, I mean, it was like, we don't have enough time to put this level of production together. And, to your point, I circling back, we learned so much. Yes. We learned a ton, and that was kind of our mindset as we started to get into the weeds was, hey, like, we're learning so much. This is great. This is only going to get easier from here. No. Although we learned some of the technology and we got some of that nailed down, it still required so much preparation for the type of shows that we were trying to put together. And I am proud of the work that we did. In fact, I recently talked to a friend of ours, Isaac, and he was like, so I was just listening to your XL2 Stipa, and I'm like, you actually listened to our podcast? That's awesome. Okay, so we know you're a super geek. That's great, because only super geeks are going to listen to podcasts about Stipa and XL2s. And yeah, proud of the content that we put together. And we revisit it. I mean, remember coming back to the table and going, dude, are we going to keep doing this? Is this even possible with our day jobs?
I know, it was so much.
And I'm glad that we didn't let it die. We said, look, this is getting back to the core, which was wanting to just capture some of the awesome conversation that we get to have together. We get to work together. We get to have our wonderful friendships, and we just wanted to capture some of that authenticity. And circling back, even as we came into this show, it was like, okay, so who's going to do the intro? Who's going to do the outro? You know what? I don't care who does the intro or the outro, because that's not the point. The point is for Jim and I to be able to just get on and chat about whatever we want to chat about. And if there's people that are into that and want to listen to us, then great. And if people don't want to listen to us, we're okay with that too. That's kind of the point, is just getting together, putting some content out into the environment and trying to be as authentic as we can.
Yeah. Yeah. And trying to like that. That's one of my favorite things, is going to an industry get together and just those, happenstance conversations that you have, usually centered around technology, but it's just good conversation with really interesting, really smart people about the industry that we have a lot of love for and so much fun with. So I think we're back. And then the other thing too is you see all these like kids on TikTok and stuff getting like there's no production. It's just them doing goofy stuff online and having a good time. And I think if we get closer to that, I don't know. I think it's going to be more compelling. I hope it's going to be more compelling.
But come on, man, we're AV professionals. We've got to produce a professional event, right? This is exactly the problem that we got into, was everything needed to get such a level of production that's not sustainable for us right now.
Yeah.
I look forward to, finding more time to produce this type of fun content, but the whole point was just getting together to chat, right? Getting together to rap and share thoughts, share ideas.
Yes. And hopefully obviously we are both very good looking men. I mean, there's no doubting it. And
I don't think you needed to even say that. I mean,
it's obvious. I know this.
It's obvious. It's obvious. I mean, we can spend a little bit of time on it if you'd like, but it probably goes unsaid.
And we can flex our AV prowess, because we don't really need to show off, but I hope anyway we sound a little bit better than like the people with just, they stand 10 feet away from the mic, can't listen to them for more than 2 minutes. You can barely make out what they say. So hopefully we still bring some production value to it, but it's just more sustainable, like you said.
Totally more sustainable. There was that one podcast that we did where the audio was shit, and
yes.
Oh, am I allowed to swear? Is that all right? Yeah. No.
I think we're all adults.
We're just gonna. But that's right. Yeah. We checked the box that said this is not acceptable. So a little F-bomb. I'm not going full F-bomb yet, but I might. This is authenticity at the end of the day. But that episode where we're so excited, we had a great episode, and then the audio was absolute shit. Like, it was the worst possible audio. And then of all people,
and it was about audio quality.
Oh, dude. And then you got guys like Gain coming on and being like, "Oh, how's Jeremy and Jim gonna feel about this?" And I'm like, yeah, only like one of the most respected audio consultants that I know in the industry is like, "Ooh, guys, yeah, might wanna do a couple of test runs before you hit go on that stream." So hopefully that's not happening right now, is that we are not broadcasting some crazy robot voice because, we didn't have enough time to test everything. That's like the whole problem here, is how much time it takes to do these things. So we're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah. I think we'll have fun. And the other thing too is that I'm looking forward to not being so scripted, not being so, I don't know if it was stressed or, just trying to put on that show vibe, is I would forget that the audience is there and we can interact with them and we can break down that fourth wall and say hi to Casey Baldwin on the chat. I like that experience. It's much more calm. It's much more friendly and opening. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Totally. Yeah. Still learning how to use the Facebook Live dashboard, and hopefully I won't disconnect the video here in the middle of our broadcast. But yeah, shout out to Casey Baldwin. Thanks for listening in, man. He put a funny comment on the board. I thought you were just the janitors. It's funny. Recently, we got some new hires at level 3, and I hadn't met them before, and we were over in the warehouse, and Casey's introducing him to him, and I'm like, hey man, I'm Jeremy, just the janitor. And come to find out, Casey kept that going for a couple of weeks. And the tech thought, yeah, just the janitor, at the end of the day. So it's been a fun ongoing joke. And that tech actually just recently introduced me as the janitor to a couple of other techs, which was the coolest moment. I loved it.
Outstanding.
Oh, we are getting some shade right now from Chris Montfort, who also probably heard that amazing failed attempt at a quality audio broadcast. His comment, I thought the robot voice was part of the gimmick. Chris, I would love to say that is the case, but no, that was actually just a total fail on our part. In fact, it didn't even sound like a good robot. I mean, intelligibility was horrible. And I think we actually came back and reproduced that show a couple more times.
Twice.
Because we can install and commission some of the craziest commercial AV systems out there, but getting a live podcast going, if you've never done it before, there's a learning curve, a steep one.
Yeah. And that's, nothing, Facebook is Facebook, but they try to make it so user friendly that I don't know what language they're talking. I can't, I go to our page and I just don't get it. I just want to go live, or I just want to put an event out there, and there are all these buttons and things and words that it just doesn't make any sense to me. And so I always stall right when we're trying to do something, because I just it's such a completely different interface than what the regular Facebook is. It throws me off so hard.
Did you realize what you just said? You were like, they make it so easy that I can't figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. No, but don't, I don't know. I find this to be the case many, many times where people, it's like they give it to some UI consultant and they're like, oh, this is the language we're going to use and this is the way we're going to change it just to make sure. But everyone has been using the Facebook proper certain ways for years. Then they try this Facebook Live thing and they try to soup it up and make it easy for you to promote it and boost it and all these things, but the buttons are in all the wrong spots and it's just complete. It's a completely different experience. It's very frustrating. So I'm sure the most
complex, simple interface you'll ever find going live on Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah, and then just now we're trying to go live. You've got like the mandatory fields that need to be entered in, but they are on the completely so the go live button is on the lower left and all the mandatory fields are on the upper right. So your eyes aren't going there.
They're going to shut us down, man. Here we are talking shit about Facebook. They're going to be like, these guys are blocked. We're not going to be able to post anything for 7 days.
Or, it's free consulting.
Oh, right? Yeah. Well, we should probably get paid for this consulting. A couple of good-looking guys like ourselves. Incredible audio quality on every podcast. They should be lucky to have us.
100%. I'm not worried. I stand by it. I stand by my statements.
Hey, we chose Facebook. Facebook, we're here. We're here to stay. Try not to change your interface anymore because we finally just learned it. Yes. Why can't we go live without a description, a title? We took the time to set up this event, live event. It's got the title, it's got the description. Where's the go button? Why do I got to re-enter the title and re-enter the description? I don't get it, man. I don't get it, but I don't have to get it.
That's right.
So, man, I'm super excited to be here. I'm super excited that we finally came back together and got another podcast, and the intention is to be getting this going on a regular cadence again, hopefully every other week, but again, with the pressure off. And you know what? As we're just getting into this, how long have we been Streaming, I think we're at, I don't know, because, the interface doesn't make it easy to see how long you've been streaming, but maybe I'll figure it out here in a few minutes. But I already feel better, right? Like, I don't feel like we've got to script anything. It's just a nice back and forth conversation. And I do love being able to interface with folks. And with that said, sorry, everybody, we started 30 minutes late because, ran out of the office, coming home, had to set up a new streaming laptop with our new preset. And that didn't go so well the first time, had to reboot a couple of times, but we were not going to, Casey, thank you, 16 minutes.
Thank you, Casey.
How great is it that we've got people listening that can pull that forward easier than the streaming dashboard.
Yes.
Man, I mean, seriously, I can't find how long we've been streaming in this month. Like, seriously, I'm looking at the dashboard. I'm sharing it to you through Teams. Am I just missing it here? Like, what? Yeah. So simple, so difficult, and yet so simple at the end of the day. Oh, there it is. Hey, look, down in the bottom left-hand corners. Almost like,
there you go. Exactly.
16 minutes and 30 seconds. So you've been listening to 16 minutes and 30 seconds of us talking shit about podcasting and how difficult it's been on us and all the things that we've learned. But we're back.
We're back, baby.
Back. And we even have our 1973 photo portrait backgrounds, right? Like, with some bad hair and some polo shirts. I think this is a good start.
I do feel like we need miniature cowboy hats and just overdone makeup. Like, did you guys have, what was that? Color Street? No, what was the?
What? Overdone Color Street?
Yeah. No,
this is a New York thing, isn't it? This is a Long Island thing, isn't it?
Didn't you have that when you were like 13 years old? You would go to that photo place in the mall and they would do you up. Like
a glamour shot?
Glamour shot. That's what I'm going for.
Dude, I don't have enough hair to pull off. Yeah, Aquanet. You need Aquanet and you need like lots of makeup and you could hurt yourself because Aquanet's very flammable. I used to use that stuff when I was a kid in a lighter and
it's good. Well, that's hornet spray.
Hornet spray. Ants out here in Arizona. We don't have hornets. We just have lots of ants and scorpions and rattlesnakes, Gila monsters.
Oh my God.
Black widows, brown recluses, and even the plants are trying to kill you at some point. So, lots of cactus. But you can burn all that stuff with Aquanet and a lighter.
The moral of the story is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So glamour shots, and we're bringing back Aquanet. And if we can get mobile on this thing, maybe we can go burn some ants outside with it. And I think I'm not above that at this point.
That'll be next show. We'll figure that out.
It sounds intense. It sounds like it's going to require a lot of planning. I might be out before we even start.
Yeah, we could figure that out.
Well, dude, how's the weather right now in Long Island?
This is my favorite weather because it's like nice and cool at night, but still like 70s, 80s during the day, and the humidity is starting to die off a little bit. So this is fall hiking weather, campfire weather. It's a good time to be here.
You're all into camping and hiking, aren't you?
I love camping, man. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good time. And I don't know, we're surrounded by technology, some of the most advanced technology in the world. And I love trying to make a fire with like a bow drill, just the complete opposite end of the spectrum, as primitive as possible. That's where I kind of want to spend my time nowadays. In my off time, I should say. In my off time, I want to get kind of as primitive as possible.
I like that. Have you successfully started a fire with a bow drill?
I've gotten close. I've gotten lots of smoke, but it's hard, man.
It's incredibly exhausting. I understand. Like you got to work at that stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel like when you
see least bit of humidity, Dunzo.
Really?
Yeah.
You see this stuff on TV, and I always assume that they just start recording at the last like 20 seconds when it turns into fire, because it always looks so easy when Bear Grylls does it on TV. And I don't even know if he does that. I just pulled it out of my ass. Just throwing
No, I'm
that
sure
out
he
there.
does. I'm sure, but that's exactly what happens, and that's why, like, typically, like that those 5 minutes of bow drills, the people are sweating already because they've been at it for countless times. It's cool though. It's good, and then when you do it, it's like getting a podcast to go live on Facebook. It's that same feeling.
Oh, you're like, I made fire, like Tom Hanks in, what is it? It's not Stranded. What is Castaway with the ball?
Yeah,
right? Wilson and Tom for 2.5 hours, the only man in the world that can pull off a movie with just himself and a volleyball. But I love that moment in the movie where he's like, I've made fire. That's what you feel like right there, right?
Every time you get a fire going, that's how I feel. It's good.
Well, the weather out here in Arizona is still right at that 100 mark. We've just started to dip under 100, barely, like just barely. The sun's starting to go down a little sooner. The nights are getting a little bit more tolerable. I'll just share this with the group. I know you know it, but I've recently started helping with my daughter's marching band, high school marching band, right? So they found out that I might know some things about AV, just AV, not live podcasting. Good God, nobody wants me to help them with that process at this point.
Clearly.
Well, we went live today, and as long as it goes well, then this is a resume builder for our live podcasting. But the marching band, wow, what an experience! And wait, Jim, I think I just found this out about you. You've got experience in marching band,
big time, man.
Like you were a marching band person.
Yes,
a band member, if you will.
I was the head, shout out to Mineola High School Marching Band. I was the head of the low brass section. I am a trombone player. Very exciting.
You say the low brow section? That would make a lot of sense.
Low brass?
Low brass.
I mean, trumpets get a lot of, a lot of the credit, but without the low brass, it's just,
you can't
is it
feel
even worth it? Right, exactly. Is it even marching band without the low brass?
So what'd you play?
Trombone man.
Trombone man.
Yeah.
Well, I was never good enough to play an instrument. I may have played around with some turntables and some vinyl in my earlier days. But they found out that I'm into AV. Somehow the band director found out, and he was like, so I hear you're kind of into this stuff. I said, yeah, I might know a couple of things. And now I'm the sound engineer for the Black Hawk Marching Band. So this is a shout out to the Black Hawk Marching Band, Williamsfield High School. And Tuesday nights and Thursday nights and now Friday nights for football games, and sometimes on Saturdays I'm hanging out with the band, helping them get their audio system tuned, because they've got the whole pit, got the vibraphones, got the marimbas, got the what they call it, aux, right? Aux sounds, which is this is this kid that's got all these instruments around him, like just so many different instruments around him to bring in all these aux sounds throughout the whole game, and they mic all that stuff up. We've got a synth player now. I've been hooking up drum triggers, but I'm having an amazing time with it. It's been allowing me to just have an incredible experience with my daughter on a deeper level, and give some of myself to the marching band. But they drag these kids out on the field at 6 o'clock, and in Arizona at 6 o'clock when the sun is still up and it's the summer, it is brutal. So just this last week, dude, just this last week, Thursday, we went out on the field, and it was the first night where we all weren't just dripping sweat by the end of the day. And we've had a huge monsoon season here in Phoenix in Arizona this year, so there's a lot of extra moisture. So the bugs are insane. I mean, you look at it is literally like a blanket of bugs between you and the high pressure sodium lights up on those light poles. Like you look up and it's like, oh damn, it's like a horror movie happening above your head.
And that, like, the marching band, that is no joke. Like, they have to stand at attention with their instruments up, and their shoulders working. So I can't even imagine doing that in 100 degrees. Like, that's ridiculous.
I gotta say, I had never really paid a lot of attention to the marching band in high school. And now that I'm paying like uber close attention to it, I'm mixing the show and calling solos. We've got the flutist and we've got a baritone and we've got an alto sax all mic'd up through the wireless channels, and we solo them throughout the show. It's a very progressive marching band, at least from what I'm seeing from other high schools here in the Valley. But I had no idea, just a quick note on that. I've been a band dad for like quite a few years with my daughter coming up through elementary school. And, you show up to these shows and it's awesome. It's cute. They're doing their thing and it's nice. And then you get into elementary school or not elementary school, but middle school, and just everybody gets super awkward. The whole thing is awkward because everybody in middle school is awkward, but you show up and you're supporting, and then they got my daughter into marching band. And the very first like parent show they showed us this summer, we show up and I was like, whoa, okay, this is a whole nother ball game. I mean, like I was feeling it. They had put 2 full weeks in summer for band camp, like this one time at band camp, jokes all day long. Yeah, I tried that on my daughter and she's like, I don't even know what you're talking about, Dad. And I'm like, yeah, that's that moment where you realize that you're not young anymore and your kids are making fun of you. But man, they blew us away. I was like, oh, if this is what marching band is, I am freaking in on this program. And it is so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah, it's crazy when your kids go from, you expect them to still be that cute, like kind of squawky sound, and it's incredible because they're your children and they put so much effort into it, but it's more cute, and then they get to that level where they start to be impressive, and it's like, and it's like a light switch. Where did this come from? How the hell did that happen? Who are you? And now all of a sudden you're like really good and really impressive at something. I love when that happens.
It's intense. Like there's the kids are intensely passionate and committed to it, especially at this point, because like any of the early quitters are going to be like out the door already at this point. So the folks that are left, man, they are in it to win it. And the band director, I loved it. The first time I talked to him, he's like, hey man, yeah, no, this is a good experience. We'd love to have your help. And he's like, just so we're clear, I'm here to win. And I'm like, oh, I like that. What are we winning? Because I don't know anything about marching band. He's like, oh, we're a part of the competitions and we've been to the semifinals and finals in one state the last 5 years in a row. And I was like, oh, and if I can offer something to the sound system, because everybody who knew how to use the sound system literally like graduated last year. So they're just refiguring it all out again. I love that though. Like, yeah, no, we're here to have fun and destroy everyone else in the process, right. Which I can appreciate that.
That's exactly how my band director was. He fashioned himself after a college basketball coach, and like when he spoke, the entire 130-piece band was like totally focused on him. It was intense. It was really good.
Mineola High School had 130-piece band.
Yeah, like it was strange. I don't know if they're still like that, but when I was in high school, the cool kids were in band, the jocks were in band, it was a band centric couple of years. It was wild. It was crazy, but it was such a good time.
How many students? What's the student body size?
maybe like 800.
That's
it was a
ridiculous.
significant. I know it's significant.
That's ridiculous. How is it that almost 25% of the
I
student
know,
body
dude.
is in marching band? Did they literally not have anything else to do? Was there no sports program? Like,
No. Well, I think we got better, but at the time we were not very good football players. And people literally came to see the marching band instead of the football game. But it was
that's crazy, dude.
Yeah,
We have a
yeah.
huge school, and we have 70 in the band, and that's considered a large band here in Arizona.
Yeah. But and I think for us it was just the leadership, like, because you can, like, I'm sure band is regular concert band is bigger than 70, and then maybe you whittle it down to the elite for the marching band or something like that. But just when I was there, my band director was like, I want a huge marching band. I want everyone in. We're going to create this program for everyone and just drive those numbers up and get that like big band vibe going. It was a lot of fun. It's good.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. That's incredible. Yeah, I'm learning a lot every single time I go out there. There is so much happening that I'm like, how are you people even keeping track of what's going on?
Yeah, I know. But that's good, and I love that. I love that you get to spend time with your daughter and pitch it like that. That is time definitely well spent. That's really beautiful.
I just turned my light on in case anybody was watching, because we were so professional with our production that I had that nailed early on. But look at the difference. Look here. I'm gonna turn it off for a second. Ready? No light. Light. Eh?
That's a lesson right there.
We're down to 5 viewers. Definitely we've lost. I mean, we peaked out. I don't even know what we peaked out at, because I can't read the dashboard here. Peak viewers 8. Peak viewers. We still got 5. I can't even tell who the viewers are though. That would be nice to be able to see, like, oh, Casey's viewing and Chris is viewing. You gotta basically wait for a comment before you know any of these things. Okay, well, we're 30 minutes in.
Yes.
We've meandered quite a bit, and I'm perfectly okay with that.
Me too.
I personally feel like this has been a huge success so far, and we haven't even touched on the other topic that we're going to try and like come up with this topic to give us some thread of something to talk about. What was our topic today? What was it?
So it was Guess Who's Back, and then we were going to add a side of AV as a service.
A side?
Yeah.
Like a side or an aside?
An aside of AV as a service. Yeah.
Oh, we got a Ryan Teal comment. We got a Mr. Teal on the call. See, I would never have known that if he wasn't bold enough to put it back. Definitely circling back, circling all the way back. Welcome to the show, Mr. Teal. It's better having you here with us. I can tell you that.
Definitely. Always better having Ryan.
So as an aside of AV as a service. All right, well, I'll get this kicked off. So as a service, what the hell is as a service, right? AV as a service, everything as a service, you as a service, me as a service, tacos as a service. This is a thing, right? So I just recently saw this. A friend of mine sent me a post. Taco Bell now has a subscription that you can subscribe to and get freaking tacos. Literally tacos as a service. Yeah, this is legit. Go ahead and Google it.
You're not toying with me?
I'm definitely not toying with you, because I know that you should not be eating Taco Bell but can't help yourself like most of the rest of the nation, especially after a late night of drinking, which I know you don't ever do that. But when you don't ever do that, Taco Bell is there to save you and then destroy the bedroom later for you and your significant other. At least that's my experience. It never comes out well on any level.
Well put.
Yeah. Goes in great. Fast.
Yeah.
Fast. So subscription tacos. Tacos as a service. I guess, this whole as a service thing, we're all as an industry working towards pivoting to as a service type models, and so interesting. It's been such an interesting path of discovery for trying to understand what does it mean to pivot to an as a service model. How do you redefine the way you bring AV to the marketplace, right? And that's but just that alone, we're always like, well, we provide services, so like if we sell you a system and we give you some services with it, isn't that like as a service? But no, we've come to discover that it's all about subscriptions at the end of the day, renewals, everything as a subscription. And instead of selling the hardware, it's selling the use of the hardware as a service, as a monthly subscription, like Netflix, right? Nobody owns anything with Netflix. You pay them a monthly fee. You get access to their content. You watch whatever you want. You can cancel at any time. Not that we're advocating for canceling the AV as a service model if you decide to buy into it, but pretty interesting when you start thinking about the complex AV systems that get deployed out there and trying to shift the consumption model to as a service. Have you seen anything in the marketplace that is compelling you around as a service?
I mean, so, definitely software as a service. That's the easy one, and that's where I love the idea of hardware AV. All right, software as a service, sure, it makes total sense. When you don't need it anymore, your subscription ends. It's fine. You just stop using it. I have trouble wrapping my head around AV as a service because I always get trapped in the idea of leasing a car, but that's not really as a service. That's a defined time period. And so it would be more interesting to think of cars as a service where it's like almost like a never ending lease. So I'm going to subscribe to the Toyota at a certain level, and so I get a certain level of car, and I just continually have access to that level of car over and over again as long as I make my monthly payment. And I like that. I think it makes total sense for AV systems. The problem is the problem with my head being able to wrap around it is there's so much infrastructure that you need to buy into to get it set up. And so that's where I have trouble wrapping my head around the idea of it being as a serviceable,
As a serviceable.
Yeah.
I kind of like I've never heard that before. That's kind of fun. So like infrastructure wise, what are you thinking? Give some examples. Let's expand on that a little.
Well, yeah. Well, and just instead of examples, I'm just going to say as software as a service, if I don't want the service anymore, I don't need it and I just lose access to the software. Easy peasy. For an AV system, if you want to stop the subscription, you can't, right? Because you need to, I would think the way you need to structure it is you need to be able to at least cover some cost. And then if you stop paying, does the hardware get taken out because you're just treating it like a service, or like that's where I get confused.
Well, so that's interesting. How often have you seen a customer install a conference room and then be like, ooh, I hate this thing, take it back out, right? Or I don't want it anymore.
That's true.
It's an interesting thought process because, okay, like, so maybe you pay $30,000 for a nice conference room or a huddle room space all at one time, and then you're using that tool for whatever business outcome that you have. as opposed to paying $30,000 up front. Maybe you're paying a nominal monthly fee for utilizing the service. So what are some of the additional services that you could bring forward? Like, what are some additional value that you could bring? Like that $30,000 one-time buy, who's maintaining that thing? Does that thing include a service contract? Is it a proactive maintenance? Are you patching and updating firmware? Are you monitoring it? Are you able to reach in and remotely address any sort of issues? You know, I think those are the value adds that can be wrapped with the idea of as a service, as well as, hey, like you said with the car, that same monthly fee after 5 years or 3 years or whatever the program is, you get a whole new car, or you get a whole new conference room, you get current technology.
And from that standpoint, I really like it, because at that point it's a win-win, right? Because the user is going to get a well-maintained system, and it's in the provider's best interest to maintain that system, keep it up and running, because if they don't, then they have to apply resources to it, and they you know, it cuts into their profits if it's not maintained, because then they have to action to fix it. And so I love that aspect of it. You know, users get a great working system, maybe they get it replaced, but it's always kept up, and it's in the provider's best interest to keep that well-maintained system. Because you know, in the olden days, preventive maintenance used to be everywhere, and it was just a no-brainer. You buy an AV system, you pay a couple of $1,000s a year in preventive maintenance. There's a team that shows up a couple of times a year just to make sure it's polished and clean and everything like that. But I feel like in recent years we've gotten to that commoditization state where, you know, it's you buy a $10,000 room, run it to the ground, eventually it breaks, your users get really upset, and then you gotta spend another 15 to bring it back up, and there is no maintenance there. And so if we take this as a service model, I love the idea that it's a maintained system, and you still get, you know, that new system at whatever time period it is. But I like that aspect of it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mindset shift, right? It's a total mindset shift of, and sure, the customer could say, hey, you're not keeping up this system. It's not, you know, the service, the outcome, the functionality that I'm paying for isn't happening. So I want to cancel this contract. What stops them from going and getting another service provider to provide the exact same thing? It even gives, I think, a customer even more flexibility to get that service provider and that outcome that they are looking for without having that big outlay of cash at the front.
Yeah,
that you're stuck with and that you have to maintain. You brought up another topic that I want to touch on. So proactive maintenance. Is proactive maintenance dead?
well,
Traditional, maybe better stated, traditional, like showing up to blow out the projector and mark a logbook and touch all the buttons.
Filter.
Because I mean, remember in the day when a huddle room had an amplifier in it, because that was the only way we could get sound reproduction in a 5 or 6 person room.
Yeah.
So I ask again, is it dead? You know, I'd love to hear from any of our viewers that have stayed with us this long. You know, is traditional proactive maintenance dead in the AV industry? Is the idea of showing up at a room quarterly, biannually, annually to double check everything from an outside service provider, a ready test, is that still a value to customers?
Yeah. And what I'll say is it used to be provided on a larger scale from the integrator on like a holistic system level. And I feel like that's fallen out of favor and been replaced by mandatory maintenance agreements with manufacturers. Because when you buy a codec, you have to buy a maintenance plan. And that's just what you do. And then they get the firmware updates. And if they have any issue with that individual piece of equipment, you know, then you have some service level agreement built in. But as soon as the manufacturer says, well, the codec's fine, it's got to be the control system with a display, then the users are out of luck because no one's looking at that system holistically.
I like what Chris Montfort put in here. He's like, that's the white glove. You charge extra for that, right? And Chris, I actually agree with your comment that in my mind, the base level, managed service agreement of today doesn't require a technician to show up quarterly to make sure that that thing is working, right? I feel like that has gone by the wayside, especially with the fact that we are getting to the point where everything sits on the network. We've got visibility into it from monitoring tools. If you're doing it right, you've got the ability to reach in and touch those devices and actually verify functionality without ever putting a technician in the room. Yeah, I'm real curious to see how this continues to evolve over the next several years within the industry, and as customers start to consume their AV differently. That's what everybody's talking about. It happened in IT. It's happening with tacos. I mean, if it's happening with tacos, it's inevitable that it's going to happen with AV, right?
Yeah. But and Chris is getting the MVP, I think, this show, because he's bringing up a great point, and something that I always believed in is having an on-site preventive maintenance visit is huge, because they see your face, they see your shirt, they know who you are. Not only that, your technicians get more intimately familiar with the physical systems, which is huge, in terms of if you have to swap out a display, if you have a rack and you need to know how it works, or you need to know where the drawings are, et cetera. And so having a physical presence can be very valuable. And he follows up with just the optics, just so that the client is reminded, oh yeah, level three is my AV provider. Yes, I remember. And so we always use the PM visit as a huge sales call. We clean the system, we put it through its paces, we exercised all the functions, and we did a sampling of commissioning tests just to make sure that all the components were healthy. But more so, we just talked to the users and talked to the managers and say, hey, I'm from level 3. How's it working? And it was almost like a sales call with a little bit of PM. And I always thought that was so powerful.
That's a great point that both you and Chris are making, in that it's a customer success conversation at the end of the day, right? Not only am I here, double checking your system and running through the checklist to make sure the usability is there, but hey, how are you doing? What's going on? Are you happy? Is there opportunity to, potentially provide additional services within that customer? It's such a great touch point. Do you think that that's deliverable remotely? Do you think you can accomplish that same experience without actually putting a physical person on site?
I honestly think so. And that's something, especially after this crazy year, people have gotten a lot better connecting remotely. And so if we do have that concierge service as part of the as a service model, where you put a QR code on the system, and if anyone has any questions about it, if they have and maybe that's part of the service. If you have a big meeting, scan this QR code, talk to one of our remote, talk to Ryan, just to make sure that the system is up to snuff, and you connect at that level. And you still get a chance to interface, you still get a chance to ask your interview questions of the users as you're preparing the system through the network, and just being a trained set of ears at a far end before a big event. I think that could be close to as effective as showing up on site and shaking hands. Because at least they get to know you, they remember your name, and maybe they know who they want to talk to because they have that connection with them.
We got another comment here from Michael Duda. Don't forget, you need solid documentation to ensure the vendor knows what they are doing and that the client is happy.
Well, and that's a in my opinion, that is a huge part of as a service, because that's where, once you ship to as a service, that's where you really start to curate that documentation, and you know exactly where to find programs, you know exactly where to find drawings, because that's the only way you're going to be able to be effective providing this as a service model, is to know intimate details on a per room basis, rather than like, a lot of AV companies will store information on a project basis. But
Guilty.
when you have a client calling up about room 312, then the service team is like, wait, all right, room 312, we worked on that on project 4253 in like 2017, but I think there was an update in project 6102, and so now we've got to remember where the drawings are. But I think if we're offering as a service services, then we need to drill down and really focus in on how the user thinks of their rooms. And I think that's where you start to restructure, you get out of that project world and project thinking, and then curate and categorize all that system documentation on a per room basis, so that it's at fingertips. Someone calls up and within 3 seconds you can have the site file up, exactly where the program is, and you have the drawings on the ready. I think that's very exciting, and that is something that's very valuable, I would think, to a client, to have that level of service and that level of just look into what the system can offer, or what look into what that system might need.
Yeah, there's some really good comments happening right now, around standardization and McDonald's-ifying, right, the offering. And I was gonna hit on that to a certain degree, in that it seems like the technology that are going into conference rooms today and to meeting rooms today, although they do more, it's getting simpler and simpler. The amount of devices going into a room is going down, because it seems like those devices are doing more, each device, and I'm thinking about the all-in-one, sound bar, microphone, camera type situation, where literally you're down to 3 devices at a minimum, right? A display, a sound bar, and a touch panel to control the interface. And that's standardization is a huge part of AV as a service in general, to the points that are being made on the comments. And it seems like to me that those types of systems, those, let's call it 80 or 90% of the rooms out there, can benefit from that McDonald's-ified standard approach, if you will. And is there an opportunity again to rethink how we do preventative maintenance? Somebody, I think it was Chris, brought up the idea of QBRs, right? It's a different, maybe you don't need to show up quarterly to touch the touch panel and verify that it's working, because you can do that remotely at this point. But coming up with an alternative way to touch that customer and measure success.
Yeah. And for me, the most exciting thing would be to have a room usage review. Like, let's look at your rooms. Let's look at, because a huge part of as a service and AV managed services is going to be that data analytics side. And so I've for a couple of years now, I've been really excited. Like, I think this is the next big service offering that AV providers can provide to their users, is that let's look at your rooms. You've got a bunch of 16-person conference rooms, and you've got a bunch of huddle rooms, but let's look at how many people are typically in your meeting rooms. Should you offer more 8-person meeting rooms? Do you need more meeting rooms per floor? Like, let's look at how often they're booked. Let's look at how many people are typically in a room, and really crunch those numbers so that they can start to space plan based off that data. And I think having a quarterly review on that would be another tremendous value to a client.
That you can just wrap into that as a service model, right? Careful engineering, 100%. Careful thoughtfulness around the standards, making sure that you've got the data collection happening and the right data points. I mean, this has been something we've been talking about and have been presenting, you and I have presented several times on, are you collecting data? Almost everybody raises their hand. Are you actually doing anything with the data?
Exactly.
Right. And I think, again, there's such an opportunity for as a service to augment already really stressed out, overwhelmed, underwater teams that would love nothing more than to have the time available to them to crunch that data and to be able to make meaningful decisions and get meaningful metrics out of it. How can we as a service providers just bring that to the table as a value add for the type of services that we're providing?
Yeah, because how are people space planning now? That in my opinion, I think they're just doing it based off of like an architect's guess, right? And some generic just space planning, but it's not user specific, it's not department specific. Like if we start getting that room usage data and making those decisions based on individual floors or departments or whatever, that I think that could be very valuable. And bringing it back to as a service, that was another sticking point of mine is if they pay a subscription for AV as a service, how much more would a client spend ballpark than if they just bought the installation outright? Like, is there any information out there on that? Like, let's say a system would cost $10,000. And if we translate that into AV as a service over, let's say a 5-year system life cycle, how much would a client pay for a monthly subscription to something like that?
From my knowledge, from my knowledge, there's definitely an additional cost associated with as a service over the long haul, but it's nominal, right? And it's
interesting.
Typically very focused on the hardware side, and at a point it's no longer about saying, hey, let's compare a $30,000 system over 5 years, because you're going to need, in a lot of cases, that system beyond that 5-year mark. Right. And so it becomes predictable at that point. And that's one of the biggest, I think, value drivers for as a service is, when am I going to have to replace this thing? Well, the financial leaders out there are starting and continuing to pivot over to operating expenditure consumption models because they're predictable. They're predictable. You can tie SLAs to them, and it might be that you end up paying a lot more than $30,000 over the life of the system, but what if the life of that system is 15 years, right? You're continuing to, as the service provider, you have to provide the outcome that you've sold as a service. And if the equipment fails at the end of the day, you're on the hook for replacing That's that right. within an SLA timeframe and ensuring that that customer can continue to use that tool for the business outcome that they're driving for. And, I think we're going to see a lot more people embracing it, because it's safe to say that AV is no longer a commodity. And I think we were saying that, it's certainly in the AV industry, we've all been saying that for, since the beginning of the AV industry, but not the rest of the world didn't necessarily feel that way. Yeah. And one thing that the pandemic has definitely impacted our industry is if there was any, I've even seen industries that have traditionally not used conferencing technologies, like high net worth financial organizations that are used to doing deals in person with other people, are now having to completely embrace technology on a level that is, quite frankly, making them uncomfortable, because their entire culture has been built around doing deals in person. Like, you go to some of these PE firms that have some of the nicest conference rooms you've ever been in your whole life, from a interior design, architectural design, furniture, artwork on the walls, not a single piece of technology in there. No technology. And now they're needing to pivot completely to My customers don't want to come into the office. They need to be able to connect remotely, and we need to be able to embrace that. There's a lot changing in our world right now, industry wise, as well as, in general, for lots of other industries embracing technology on a level that they've never embraced. And it's going to be interesting. I think there's such an opportunity for integration companies, AV providers, to offer a whole new level of valued service through a different consumption model.
Yeah. And the predictability, I don't think that should be understated, because that is, if I were a huge enterprise, that would be huge to me, because instead of having to have these like peaks and valleys of AV spending, $15 million here and $100,000 here, and just up and down, that would be a nightmare, budget wise. So if I could have just my technology covered, plus with all the value added services, and having skin in the game from the provider to keep those systems up, right? Instead of just that project model where it's like, all right, you get in, you get out, you get paid, and then users, you're on your own. I don't care. But if you have this AV as a service model, the provider wants to keep that system up because they're going to make more money, by doing so. They won't have to do any service calls or warranty calls or SLA calls. I like the fact that we both have skin in the game, and we both want success. No one's trying to get anyone. It's just we're partners. We're walking together, and we are providing a service to keep your users happy. I really like that.
I love
really
that.
like that.
I love that. I think there's a lot of one and done mentality, right? Get the system installed. Maybe I sold you a maintenance contract, but is it a reactive maintenance contract? Are you are you answering the phone when something breaks? This is an opportunity to shift from reactive to proactive and wrap a whole bunch of other interesting services around that, like analytics, right? I love that, analytics as a service. You even mentioned services as a service. Like I think there's so much opportunity for us to take what we do every single day as an integrator and change the consumption model for our customers, make it even more predictable, and add even a greater value, which, to your point, is a huge win for the integrator themselves. Sticky comes to mind. That's always something we learn. How do you get more sticky with your customers? Well, now you're invested day after day after day. It's not just, hey, call me if something breaks. No, I'm actively paying attention to your system, ensuring that it's delivering the outcome we promised day after day, because it's in our best interests, which is in your best interests, right?
That's right. That's right.
Well, my man, we're at our hour mark. We blew through.
Awesome.
We blew, because I did find the place on the screen where it tells you how long you've been streaming, and we've been streaming for an hour and 3 minutes. So I think we might want to wrap it up here, and I'll just start by saying thanks to everybody that showed up today and has supported Experience AV up till this point. We look forward to bringing more incredibly good-looking conversations from Jim and I to anybody who's interested in hearing. And again, big shout out to Chris and to Michael. Big shout out to Ryan and Casey. Thank you again for coming in, and really appreciate you showing up.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you, guys.
All right. I guess we'll see everybody in 2 weeks, assuming we can get our streaming stuff to work. And I'm feeling pretty confident about that. So again, everybody stay safe out there. Thanks again.
No robot voice. No robot voice. Come on.
No robot voice.